Good morning, Church of the Covenant. I am Dr. Renee Willis, and I am extremely honored, humbled, and blessed to be here with you this morning. This, the final Sunday of Black History Month. I want to first thank Sister Nancy Acree and her committee for seeking me out. I then want to thank Reverend Mark Medina for extending a formal invitation to me. I also want to thank music director Dr. Matthew Garrett for seeking my input into this morning's music. Now, when Nancy first contacted me last month, I was taken by total surprise when she asked me would I consider preaching on a Sunday in February at her church's Black History Month celebration. I almost thought to say, I think you have the wrong number. This is the Richmond Heights School District, not the Richmond Heights United Church. But before I could get that out, she had already called me by name. She had already started to tell my story. And she thought that I would be a good speaker to speak on the theme, zip code, a product of your environment. She went on to tell me how she had read about me in a magazine and all about my career and my education, but that I also talked about my deep-rooted faith, and that was the draw. As our conversation continued, I was clear that she had dialed the right number, and that I was also clear that I was going to preach, if only for one day in my life. Well, here I am. Well, just who are you, some of you may be thinking. I am the superintendent of the Richmond Heights Local School District. I am now serving in my 6th year, and I have served the greater Cleveland community for 31 years in public education, from being a teacher, a principal, a deputy chief, a chief, an adjunct professor at Cleveland State and at Baldwin-Wallace, and now superintendent. Now, just as my brothers and sisters of the cloth are answering their calls to preach the word, I too feel that I've answered my call to impact lives through education. I was very intrigued when I was told that the theme for the month was all about your zip code and how it affects and impacts your life in myriad ways, whether it is in healthcare, housing policies, financing, or even education. So with the theme given to me of zip code, a product of your environment, Matthew 22:39, which reads, "And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Well, one must first think, well, what was the first commandment in the law if this is the second? And I know that we all know that that first great commandment is that thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind, for that is the first and great commandment. With all thy mind, my calling to touch minds. Now, while pondering this theme and reflecting on the scripture, I couldn't help but think of my own educational life story. From zip code 44104, where I was born, where I was raised my entire life, to now zip code 44143, where I currently work and closely reside. The continuum by which my educational life and experiences reside presented a dilemma to me around this concept of zip code, a product of your environment. I have given this dilemma a name with the help of a dear friend, and I call it the reality of the zip code versus the perception of the zip code as it relates to education. I would like to take a moment to share with you the reality of my zip code, 44104, and its impact on my education. For those that don't know, the zip code areas in Cleveland, let me help you out. 44104 is in the heart of Cleveland. It's an area that was once called the Forgotten Triangle. But most recently it's being called Opportunity Corridor. The Opportunity Corridor that will lead right to this University Circle area will slice through the heart of where I was born and raised. You may have heard of one of the major thoroughfares through the Forgotten Triangle, Kinsman. That's exactly where I grew up. 2798 East 73rd, off Kinsman. 44104 stretches from approximately East 55th all the way to East 116th. But now, as a good educator, I must give you some data. According to citydata.com, 44104 is approximately 4.7 square miles, with approximately 20,000 people residing within it. 75% are Black, 1% white, with the rest being made up of Hispanic and multiracial. 72% are renters. 44104 contains 4 or 5 of the largest housing projects in the city, such places that I played in, such as Outwaith Homes, Longwood Projects, Morris Black Projects, and then the infamous Garden Valley Projects, where I'm from. 6.5% of the residents have bachelor's degrees or higher. The estimated household income in 2017 was $15,328. The median age in the community was 29. All statistics significantly below the state average. I think you get the picture. No need for me to continue to rattle statistics. So what does a little Black girl born and raised in this zip code have to aspire to, hope for, dream for? Born in the 60s, during the height of the civil rights movement, I attended elementary school right in the heart of those Garden Valley projects, a school called Charles W. Chestnut, named after a famous African-American author, but the school no longer exists. It's been torn down and it's been replaced by a brand new Anton Gradina. I thrived in school for many years. I did well, so I thought, until one day, my family received a notification in the mail that said, due to mandatory desegregation orders, I would have to leave my community and be bused to a neighboring school across town because I was not receiving an equal education. Well, who knew? I thought I was doing well. I was happy. I was thriving. I thought everything was just fine. But when I got to South High, the school that I was bused to from East Tech, I quickly saw disparities. I vividly recall to this day coming home the first day of school, getting off that bus and saying, "Mom, the school is huge. They have a spiral staircase in the library. The walls in the halls are wavy." And my mom looked at me and I looked at her. Who knew? I sometimes wonder, where would I be if I hadn't got the different exposure and opportunities that busing afforded me? But now don't get me wrong, because there was an ugliness that I endured throughout busing as well. But my point is that kids in 44105 zip code, which is where South High is, they were receiving something different from us kids in 44104. So now I can't say for sure that I wouldn't be where I am today with a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate if I had not lived or had not been bused to a different zip code. But I do wonder if I might have even gone higher, done more, impacted deeper, if what I received on the tail end of my K-12 experience had been afforded to me throughout all of my K-12 experience. So my education is truly the reality of how your zip code can impact your education. But now don't forget, I mentioned earlier that I have a dilemma, because now I find myself 31 years into my profession dealing with the perception of zip code and its impact on education. Now, I'm still telling you my story, but now I'm talking from the lens of a seasoned veteran educator, currently working and residing in the Richmond Heights area, 44143. Listen to these data. Again, according to city.com, 4.5 square miles, Richmond Heights. 44104 was 4.7 square miles. Okay, Richmond Heights, 10,000 residents. 44104 at 20,000 residents. Median resident age, Richmond Heights, 48. 44104 was 28. The median house value in Richmond Heights in 2017, $177,000. In 2017, Richmond Heights was 45% Black, 43% white, 5% Asian, with the rest being Hispanic and multiracial. 35% of the residents have bachelor's or higher. I think it was 6.5% in 44104. And we also have 4 apartment complexes in Richmond Heights, whereas 44104 had major project complexes. So one could surmise that these data points present a completely different picture than the one I painted about my neighborhood. Thus, my dilemma. The perception of a wealthy community has been projected onto the school system that I lead, where these data points are not reflective of the community's data points. You see, my school district is 70% free and reduced lunch, 80% Black, 20% transient, largely due to the apartment dwellers that tend to move regularly. So what this has done is it has caused my district some very severe pain points relative to funding disparities with the state of Ohio. We don't receive full funding due to the perception of the wealth in that zip code. Now, for those that don't know, this all lends itself directly to the fact that Ohio and its method of funding schools was actually found unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court in 1997. They rendered a decision stating that funding schools based on property tax, i.e. zip code, was inequitable and unconstitutional. Can you imagine what the property tax in 44104 could be in comparison to, say, 44143 or even 44070, or even possibly your zip code? So where does all of this go? This goes directly back to the scriptures. It's all about loving your neighbor as yourself and wanting to ensure that while things may not always seem equal, fair, or equitable, you still are compelled to do your part, particularly in helping those that may be less fortunate. Now, for me, it was not only a mandate through busing or desegregation, but it was also the many people that saw me for me. They saw the potential inside of me. Despite what the outward appearance may have been, and despite what zip code I was from. I didn't know I was smart until they told me I was smart. I didn't know I could go to college until someone showed me how to go to college. I didn't know I could get a degree in mathematics and work at NASA Research Center and become a lover of STEM careers. But once again, the calling was to impact lives and to reach back. So thus we come to the scripture that we heard read before you, Matthew 25, reiterating verse 42, where Jesus spoke to his disciples in the book of Matthew and told them that because you did not feed me when I was hungry, or clothe me when I was naked, or visit me when I was in prison, or help me, ye shall be damned. But the disciples didn't understand that because they said, where have we ever seen you hungry, naked, thirsty? But what the Lord said to them was that in as much as ye did not do this to the least of these, ye did it unto me. So as we reflect on zip code and its impact and affect on people's lives, ask yourselves, what are you doing to help possibly the least of these? How are you advocating for equity and fairness for those that may be caught in a conundrum of an unconstitutional school system of funding? Do you love your neighbor as yourself? The second great commandment. Have you helped somebody as you've traveled along the way? Or is your living just in vain? Thank you.